Hello and you're very welcome to this JMAC podcast. I'm John McMahon. Of course, this podcast brought to you by Orgretch.com and Atak.ie. Use promo code JMAC podcast to get 15% off on Orgretch.com. Get the best games, goals, scripting on Atak.ie. Be attack-minded. On side, I'm joined by former Crossmaglen footballer Johnny Murder, former Galway footballer Finian Hanley, former Cork footballer Daniel Goulding, and former Antrim footballer Kevin Mccarthy to talk about their teams of the year, players of the year, moment of the year, management of the year. So lots to discuss tonight, and good to see the lads tonight again. Mr. Mccarthy, how are you keeping?
Great, John. I'm very privileged to be on here tonight with Johnny Murder, aka Simon Cowell, Daniel Goulding, aka Louis Walsh, Finian Hanley, aka Gary Barlow, and yourself, John McMahon, aka McMahon, aka RuPaul Drag Racer.
Oh God. 2 weeks away from football and this is what he's come up with. Mr. Murder, how are you keeping? That is a lovely Crossmaglen top.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I thought for the last one of the year, why not? Just to piss Kevin off, so it's all good. It's all good. Keeping well, thanks. Good to see the boys and good spirits, and good to see Finian there in detox. It's great. So yeah.
Imagine if we won.
He's in rehab since. Mr. Hadley, how are you?
I'm great, John. Great, absolutely great. Getting ready for the good weather that's coming at the weekend. So, we're in the thick of club championship down here at the minute. We our club had a win at the weekend, so we're up and running.
Who'd you beat?
Local derby, we played Barna. So, club championship now every weekend. Well, every weekend for the next 2 or 3 weekends. So it's filling the void after the county season.
Beautiful stuff. Daniel Goulding, how are you? You're looking fresh.
All good, lads, all good. I got stick about, was it 2 weeks ago that I looked like a bag of SH1IT, but I'd say it was just depressed, being honest with you, more than anything. I don't think it was alcohol related, but look, things are more positive now again. Things are all good. The bag in the middle club championship as well, so gearing up for a game at the weekend, so all good to go. Looking forward to this.
Happy days. Who is having the championship or how he's getting on?
Carby Rangers. Second game, lost the first one to the Bars, so need to win this one.
He means business, boys. He means business. Well, that's what we're here to talk tonight about, boys. The team of the year in the football championship, and of course the players of the year, moments of the year, and manager of the year. So really looking forward to this, lads. As I said on Twitter, there's going to be more fallouts on this than Love Island. Johnny Murta, your team of the year, my man.
The whole team or just the goalkeeper?
Well, sure, go on ahead. Do what you want to do. You normally do it anyway.
Whoa. My team of the year is Ethan Rafferty in goals. Go with Silk, corner back, Foley fullback. I think I have to go with Chrissy. I was to and fro in here with this, and I'm going to have to go with Chrissy in the other corner. Daly at 5, Morley at 6, Gavin White at 7, Conor Glass at 8, McDade at 9, Paddy Clifford at 10. Sean O'Shea, top class, at 11. Kieran Kilkenny at 12. Of course, David Clifford at 13. And the big talking point probably with the fellas be probably Ryan O'Neill at 14 and Walsh at 15.
Interesting. And your manager of the year?
It has to be Jack O'Connor.
Mr. McCarthy, your take on James' team?
I don't think there's an awful lot wrong with his team in the round. There could be lots of arguments for what he's come up with. However, you left out Damien Comer.
I did.
A guy who, for me, single-handedly won the semi-final. 2-2 in a semi-final of an All-Ireland. Okay, question marks again over his final performance, but he was consistently turning over the scoreboard for Galway all year. And I think that's the one thing that I want to emphasize from my point of view is when I was thinking about this today is this is about consistency throughout the year, not just flashes in the pan here and there. Yes, Comer did he had that marvellous game against Derry, where he came to the fore and sort of led Galway, as I say, single-handedly into the final. But for me, he was also consistent throughout the Connacht Championship. If we look at the game against Mayo, which I was looking at earlier, just keep me right, Finian, I think he scored 3 points in that game. Against Roscommon, he was taking over the scoreboard very, very well. You know, they're Division 1 teams. They're against good opposition. And, you know, this is the flaw in the whole process, where Armagh playing them sort of teams, where, you know, Dublin playing them sort of teams throughout the championship. So for me, Damien Comer is a big standout miss there. The other one, which is going to be quite controversial, is that Paddy Clifford. You know, Paddy Clifford last year, you know, John, I had him in my team and I didn't have David in my team last year. And one of the reasons was that he was very, very potent up front. I realised that his game has changed a wee bit more this year, just not just about turning over the scoreboard and finishing, but bringing other people into the game. But, you know, when we're looking in the round, you know, we're looking at players like Robert Finnerty, and certainly, you know, Shane McGuigan is another one that I have to say to you, like, you know, when you put Paddy Clifford up there, forward, first job is to score consistently. For me, you know, when you look at somebody like Shane McGuigan not getting in and Paddy Clifford getting in, that's a bit controversial. But generally, I agree with a lot of what your team is. You know, the other point that I have to make to you that I totally agree with, Ethan Rafferty in goal has to get in. It's not often a quarter-final guy gets an all-star. But when we look at this guy, he's actually revolutionised that position. Totally revolutionised it. You know, an outfield player playing back there. We're going to see lots more Rory Began next year going out around doing that. We're going to see lots more of Morgan doing that. A lot more Sean Patton doing that. And we're actually going to see other counties adopt a sort of an outfield player to look at that. Certainly, I don't know if Finian agrees with me on this, but that was part of Galway's Achilles heel this year, was the goalkeeper. And possibly in the past part of Kerry's Achilles heel. And I think that this is an absolute no-brainer. And, you know, Ethan Rafferty deserves and needs to be recognised.
Johnny, any replies to Kevin's comments?
Oh no, look, it's fair comments, and I think, you know, when I was putting Rain in there, it was either probably Glass would lose out in midfield, or and put Comer in, or vice versa. And I just think for what Conor Glass has delivered all year, whether that be with Glen, the games he was having in the club championship, or especially Ulster club, and then I seen him with Derry, and he was just phenomenal all year. As the boys know, like, Ulster is very, very tough, and you know, Glass was just everywhere. He was covering ground, his fielding of the ball, you know. So I thought equally with Rain, Rain's fielding, Rain would go out to midfield, go out there for throw ups. He was in and out. He was all over the place. I normally would agree with you, Kevin, on 100%. That I think maybe one for a quarter-final team would be pushing it. But I think this is a bit, probably with Rain's kick to bring it to extra time and different things like that. I think just this year, it was just a wee bit different. And even the catch that we seen Rain make in midfield and put a ball straight into Rory Grugan, straight off the training field, ball back of the net. You know, this guy's just different. He just is. And I think that's what this needs to be about. I think I slightly disagree with Paddy Clifford. I think any manager in Ireland, if you're picking a team, Paddy Clifford's number one on the team, even before David Clifford, because the work rate is absolutely phenomenal. And when the game was in the melting pot on different occasions, Paddy Clifford stepped up, equally like Sean O'Shea stepped up and got very, very important scores when they were needed, very important runs, very important assists. And that's not a coincidence. This guy's engine is phenomenal, and he never stops. So look at it's a good argument, but it'd be interesting to hear the boys' take on it, John.
Yeah, I think. Hanley's back. What do you think, Mr. Hanley?
No, my daughter just wants to get something from the fridge there. Not a can of beer or anything, I hope.
If she's anything like Daddy,
drinking her mother's gin and tin. Yeah, no, look, there's a few decisions or a few positions that are going to be debated every year because of look the way the kind of the year goes, and I suppose the first one, Rian and Damien. I actually went for Rian O'Neill in midfield instead of Conor Glass. Nothing really, no real science behind it. I just think for Rian, the way, as Johnny says, the way he plays the game and the way he played the game this year was refreshing. It's something we haven't seen in the last while, because even the Brian Fentons, they're great and but there's a lot of, what the word is, not rigidness, but there's a lot of process to a lot of players now, and I think he's a little bit of a maverick. He's a bit old school, like the way he kicks, he's high field, and it's a lot of the traits going back to the 90s, and I thought that was very refreshing to see this year. So I enjoyed watching him play, so I put him in midfield with Killian McDade, and I picked Comer. I suppose I picked Comer because, look, being from Galway and a Galway supporter, I think that semi-final was a massive, massive game for us. The win was huge, and we wouldn't have been where we were without him. He was absolutely fantastic. So he grabbed the ball by the bull by the horns at times and dragged us through that game. And I know he had a poor final, but I think, as Kevin says, across the spread of the year, I think he had his best year. He's a fine player. Everyone in the country thinks he's a fine player, but his best year for Galway was this year, and that merits him getting into the team. And I think the semi-final, for what we felt as Galway supporters, because we hadn't been there in so long, and him doing it, that put him in. And in the full back line, then I put Thomas Sullivan in. I know this is another debate, but I think he had a good year. He had a fine year. He was talking. We were talking about player of the year. He got roasted by Walsh in the final, but I think outside of that, he was kicking scores. He added a bit of everything. He was marking. He did really well. I have him in there with McCaig and Jason Foley. I think Mccloskey was in hard luck to lose out. Liam Silk did well, but I don't think he was the best back. I think Galway deserved maybe one back, and I think John Daly was that. So other than that, I think I'm pretty much similar to Johnny across the board. Gavin White, yeah, no, I think they're the only three decisions I think we're all going to be debating tonight. I think the rest of them are pretty straightforward. Paddy Clifford has to be in the team, Kev. Sorry, I just think, I've watched him closely this year. He made everything tick, like his kick pass and his energy, everything. He's just a phenomenal footballer. I think he was that all year. So I have him in at 13 there. So.
Your manager of the year, Finian?
Yeah, it has to be Jack O'Connor. Jesus, it's they won everything. They only lost one game, I think. So, he came back first year back. Pressure was on, So I just think that, the way he managed the situation down there and the pressure and how he managed the change, how they changed from, what they were under Peter Keane to being this robust team. Obviously not a popular decision, I would say, if they had lost, bringing in Paddy Tally. So there was a risk there. So I think in fairness to him, he took the risks and he went with them.
Yeah.
I'd just come in and Finian's point there. I suppose one about Jack and two about Tom Sullivan. The players, you can hear off every single one of them worship Jack O'Connor, and you can see they trust him and he trusts his players, which is, I suppose, nearly the most single important thing if you're an inter-county manager at that level. Jim Gavin had it. And then, you look at his trust in Thomas Sullivan. He left Thomas Sullivan and Shane McGuigan because he thought he was probably the only fella that could keep him to even scoring 5 or 6 points from play. He didn't move him off him. And Tom Sullivan, in the end, you could say Shane Walsh kind of went quiet in the last 15 minutes. But look, he stuck to it and he didn't influence the game the last 15 minutes. And he obviously thought Tom Sullivan was the only fella that could get near him, and he kept him on him. So, look, I think the trust that Jack has in his players, the honesty he gives them, and then the flip of that is they all obviously would do anything for him. You can see by the way they played this year. I suppose it's not usual for Kerry to be as defensive as they were and even play with a false six, we'll call it, and they all just bought into it. So yeah, don't like admitting it, but he is one serious operator. That's that after Tyrone winning every All-Ireland, he's after winning 3 All-Irelands and 3 leagues after. It's crazy stuff like.
Yeah, very good point, Dan. And any kind of thoughts on Johnny Finian's team, Dan?
I'd be similar enough. I'll just say what I'll call out my team, and we can go. I went Rafferty, Silk, Foley, Chrissy, Tom Sullivan in the half back line, as he plays anywhere in the 6 backs anyway, and he's nearly up in the forwards as much. Daly, White, Glass, McDade. I will read in the half forward line: Sean O'Shea, Paddy Clifford, David Clifford, McGuigan and Walsh. I suppose I went for nearly consistency over the year as opposed to stand-up performances. That's why I didn't go with Comer and I didn't go with Kilkenny. I think Kilkenny puts in an 8 out of 10 every year, and he was very good in the second half against Kerry. But at the same time, I thought Rian was more influential over the year, and I thought McGuigan was fairly bulletproof throughout the year. Excellent, and also excellent against Clare, and still ended up getting most of the scores in the semi-final. I know it was their poorest outing, but he was rock solid all year for me. Freeze from play, work rate. I just think he was fresh breath of air to the championship after kind of having a good league campaign and showing a lot of promise last year. I thought he delivered in a big way. Other than that, I'd say I'm pretty similar to the lads, but look, it's toss of coins with all this. Is down to what you're thinking at a given moment. They could change at any time.
But Kilkenny is like, he's such a victim, isn't he, of standard? Like it's
yeah.
As you say, Danny, he's an 8 out of 10 in our old Byrne Cup match. Like, it's sick.
Yeah.
The standard he sets. You know, he's an all-star most years, but I suppose just to change it up a bit, you give it to someone else.
Yeah.
Like, you know, on any given year, he's better than everyone else. That wing half forward or centre forward. He just the man's a machine. Like, you know, so it's you know, other guys have done really well because it's their first kind of season doing well. You know, the likes of Damien, the likes of Rian, but like Kilkenny's just doing it every year for 10 years. It's frightening. So he probably deserves to be in, but I suppose I see your point.
No, I would sort of agree with Daniel as well. And my major issue is not Kilkenny's consistency, nor his ability throughout. His one standout performance was, as you pointed out, that second half against Kerry, where he really, again, dragged Dublin back into that game. He was to the fore, real leadership. My issue more is when we compare and contrast the year that other people had, particularly Rian and McGuigan, and I'll come back to that point in a minute, Johnny. The Dublin press are going to have a say here, and unfortunately, that's what happens in these things. Now, there's press from around the country, but there is a Dublin-centric press. And when we look at, we're talking about Chrissy being involved, and we're talking about possibly Conor Glass being involved in terms of the team, 2 players from a semi-finalist. I have no doubts that they're going to try and fit someone from Dublin in somewhere. Mm-hmm. Kilkenny is that obvious choice for me straight up. There's been talk about James McCarthy. Again, Daniel, comes back to your point, and I think this is what we need clarified as a GAA public. What are the conditions for somebody to get this? Are we talking about across the National League and the Championship? Because if we look at Rian, for example, throughout the National League this year, he was incredible in so many different ways. Not only was his outrageous and maverick ability that Finian talked about, but his leadership, his young leadership of that team to drag Armagh to the forefront this year in them opening 3-4 weeks of the league was highly important in Armagh's season and was highly influential in us all sitting up. But realistically, is that what they're going to look at? Is it consistency over the leagues, or is it just that once you enter the Championship, it's all about what you do there? And that's the big unknown. And as I say, the Dublin press is the unknown as well for me. But when I look at that issue of consistency, McGuigan, without doubt, consistent all year long in all competitions, and Rain as well.
Well, Kelby, the only thing is the Dublin press and the All Stars and whatever, but there's nothing going to be more important than the JMAC podcast team.
I know. I suppose, Johnny, what we're trying to do is we're trying to look ahead and judge what these other people are going to do, whether they be experts in their field or not. And what I'm trying to say is we've got to look at the theory behind this and how we pick our teams about consistency. And certainly I think Daniel makes a really, really good point here about consistency over the year. And when we look at Rain or Shea McGuigan, who, you know, whether you like one or two of them or both of them in your team, then we've got to look at that in the round against everybody else competing for them places.
Yeah, but Derry aren't getting more than two. To your point, Kev, they're not getting more than two. Like that's, I understand what you're saying. You know, I suppose these things are. I don't think they're over the year. I think they're heavily swayed towards the latter stages of the championship, which they always. We've seen it before. It's rare that you'll get a guy who wins a provincial championship only in Ulster. If you win an Ulster championship, then you're in the frame. But all the other provincial championships, and then that's the other side of it. Like a couple of the dubs were brilliant in the Leinster championship, but it's not taken into account. The Leinster championship, I'd say it never even comes up in a conversation. Kieran Kilkenny was probably a 9 out of 10 in all those games, but against Wexford, do you think people are sitting down going, Jesus, he had a great game against Wexford? Not a hope. Do you know what I mean? So like the likes of Comer, when Galway played 2 Division 1 teams in Connacht and obviously got to the final, you know, you'd be looking at getting 4, 5, probably 4, I think. But I think they'll sit down and they'll kind of look at it that way. I don't think it's crossed the year, Kev, to be honest. I think, you know, I just don't. I think the league is the best competition. You know, I suppose look at Clifford, right? David Clifford, who was the best player in the league and the championship. But like, obviously he's nailed down. But I think what he's done in the championship is really people are going to stand up. They're not going to sit down and say, geez, he was brilliant in the league as well. I just don't. I'd say, how many is on this selection committee? 7 or 8, is it?
I don't know. I think it's maybe 10 or 12 from all different provinces, and then obviously you get 2 or 3 extra journals from Dublin. So that's just my issue with it. I mean, it's about one of these things is about consistency for me. And as I say, you get a flash in the pan performance here or there, and you know, consistency for me. Tom O'Sullivan didn't make my team. I love Tom O'Sullivan, as you know, John, but he can't make my team after the All Ireland final he had. Big call. But when you look at Chrissy at cornerback, when you look at Walsh and Liam Silk, and you look at Tag Morley in the full back line, you know, and the All Ireland final that certainly Silk had, Walsh certainly misses out for the same reason that Tom O'Sullivan does, because you know he got a tour of time from Clifford. So John Daly, I think the lads have put out as 100% right. He can't maybe be fit into centre back because Pag Morley's had such a big influence on the year for the role that he's played in there. And Gavin White has been tremendous. But John Daly, if we are to fit him in, it's going to be at wing back. And that's why I disagree with Dan and Tom O'Sullivan. I'm his biggest fan. But he got absolutely and utterly tortured in the All Ireland final. Tortured.
But you're not looking at consistency over the year then? I thought you said you were looking at consistency over the year. I think the biggest and most consistent player, one of them is Tom O'Sullivan, bar the final. He got absolutely roasted in the final, but so did Comer. Sean O'Shea roasted in the final.
Who was Sean O'Shea did, and that's why Daly's probably in my team. Daly was excellent that day against him.
But Sean O'Shea's in your team as well.
Who was? Yeah, he is. Tom O'Sullivan playing, and who was Tom O'Sullivan marking in the Dublin game?
He loves proving a point. He will kill a man to prove a point, won't you?
Go on, Kev. Go on. This is your time to shine.
Well, he started out on Dean Rock. Then Dean Rock might as well have been his dad, Barney Rock, because he was doing nothing. Right?
Barney Rubble.
He might as well have been Dickie Rock, right? And then they switched him.
Dickie Rock could have shown a jig or something.
So they switched them over when the going got tough. They switched them into Kilkenny.
I thought Buglook was on Kilkenny.
Whoa,
No.
Dan, say that again.
Buglook.
There,
Yeah.
Kev, is that all right?
It'll do for the time being. I'm not saying it again. But O'Buglet, they kick him off.
What?
They kick Bob off. He's known as Bob, right? That's what he's known as. B.O.B., the rapper. They take him off Kilkenny because of the influence he's having, and O'Sullivan's brought in there. O'Sullivan's a go-to man. There's no problem with that. I'm admitting that. But, you know, the second half of the Dublin game, and then again, he got forward and scored a couple of points in the first half, if you remember. But for me, the All-Ireland final, he had an absolute nightmare. A nightmare. And so did Kelly at fullback for Galway. The other thing is about the quality of player that you're playing against, and this is no disrespect to Kerry, but if you look at the games that Galway had this year, the Mayo game and particularly the Roscommon game as well, the quality of player that they were playing against, and then you look at Armagh, you look at certainly at Derry, you know, the quality of player that Shane McGuigan was up against every week, you know, was Tom O'Sullivan-esque, maybe just not as good as Tom O'Sullivan, but it was a tight marking defender, and he was producing excellent performances every week. So that's another issue about, you know, when you talk about consistency of good performance. Well, who was he really marking?
You're asking me.
Well, that's what I'm saying is for me
I
when
I know what you're saying. I absolutely know what you're saying. It's all relevant, and that's the thing. I suppose that's where the Dubs and Kerry probably fall down a bit, because you're looking at the opposition. Like Dan, like you were probably at the Munster semi-final between Cork and, like, Brian Hurley was causing trouble. The inside forward line was causing trouble that day.
Yeah.
For long periods, you know. Hurley,
I would have said Kerry were poor against Cork. So, and that's not saying a huge amount. Cork played with two sweepers and gave him trouble up till 20 minutes left, and then obviously pulled away at that stage. But Clifford was poor in that game. He was kept quiet. So you look, it's very subjective.
And Clifford, sorry Dan, Clifford didn't play in the
Munster final.
Did he? Yes,
No, he was injured. Yeah. The one I struggle with then, the small bit, is Ty Morley. I know what you're saying about he had a big influence on the game, but call me old-fashioned here. That is a nice role if you're clued in as a footballer. That's as nice a role as you get. Whereas Tom Sullivan marking Shane Walsh is not a nice role. And more often than not, he's quietened a lot of big players through the air. Ty's role is he's solid. Does his job well. Would I say he's done anything out of the ordinary? I wouldn't, being honest. He just has a good head on the shoulders, and he knows how to play the role. But look, it's all open to interpretation. It's like Tom Daly, I think, had more of a, or Daly, he's not Tom Daly, what's his first name? Sorry.
The diver.
He's a diver. Daly had more of an influence at centre back for me for Galway than Ty did, I think.
See, for me, the only player in the country, when you compare things, the only player for me at the country can get near to Clifford, can get near to him, is probably Chrissy McCaig. And we haven't seen that matchup yet. Hopefully we'll see it next season in terms of one-on-one.
Yeah.
He's just unbelievable, and that's his high standards that he sets. And, you know, he held every guy he had this year. And look, he was playing against some phenomenal footballers, and that's the point I'm trying to make. Who are you marking every week? Who are you up against? You know, and the consistency, what I mean by that is, you know, when you look at Rain, he was in Ulster, you know, boys were out to target him very, very early on in that competition. Then he goes in through the back door. You know, he does what he has to do. You look at Shane McGuigan, he's up against good, top-notch defenders, like Pádraig Camshie. These boys, you know, back to back. So it's difficult that way if you know where I'm coming from.
Yeah, but look at he's putting up big stuff there, but sometimes, lads, you know yourself, sometimes even a man's having a quiet game and you say about putting Chrissy onto Clifford and you'd love to see it, and yeah, we would love to see it. But we seen it with Sean O'Shea in the final. You know, Daly marked him incredibly well. But when the game got into the melting pot, fucking Sean O'Shea stood up. He done a dummy run out, cut back. He lost his man when the game got into the melting pot and set up a couple of key scores. The fist pass into your man didn't even have to break stride. And good players, as the boys know, good players has a way of finding a way to win. And for me, sometimes that's the difference. You know, I don't know, maybe Finian could tell me. I'd love to know how many times Daly touched the ball in the final. You know, there was different stages where his job was to stick like glue to that man. No matter if the ball was going past him, he wasn't moving. He had one job to do. You know, and when you have a man disciplined to do that, you know, and actually have the discipline, it's class. And Chrissy can do that. But also Chrissy can go the other way. He can go up the field and kick a score. You know, so he's a phenomenal athlete, a phenomenal player. But when you're picking these things as well, I think we have to be conscious sometimes. Like, you're talking about the best guys in Ireland, and you know, it's mesmerising to watch.
Yeah, and Sean O'Shea, I think in the final, particularly the first half, and it's a big period of the game, you know, that they didn't play Sean O'Shea into the game a lot in the final. In the first half, they played a lot down the left-hand channel. Stephen O'Brien got probably 10 more touches than Sean O'Shea did, and it wasn't because of tight marking. It just they played the Cusack stand side. Gamey got a lot of ball, as we've seen, and he missed whatever chances. But Stephen O'Brien was on a power ball, so like I don't think they just went down the centre because Galway flood the centre. So they probably just, you know, maybe not a decoy, but maybe it was a tactic of Jack's to go down the left hand side. He probably saw vulnerability on our right side. So Sean O'Shea didn't get a lot of ball. It wasn't that he was getting beaten out in front or anything like that, you know.
My issue with Sean O'Shea is in my team for the simple reason is his performances up until that game were I mean, the big thing about Sean O'Shea, a bit like Kilkenny in the second half, Sean O'Shea on his own took that semi-final to Dublin in the first 10-15 minutes in the first half in that game. He was incredible. Yes, he gets the goal, knocking over frees, bringing other people into the play. He was absolutely brilliant. And by the way, he was marking no slouch in Johnny Cooper. Dublin got the matchups for me wrong that day in terms of Cooper should have been at full back against Clifford, in my opinion. But, you know, in that first 15-20 minutes, his influence in that game from, as you say, Finney, in the centre ground was incredible. Bringing other people into the game, his runs off the ball, his free taking, obviously the goal that he scored. And just in the final, sometimes maybe, but I'm just speculating, Jack asked him to just maybe go out into the wing for a bit and let other people, you know, take the lead as such. And sometimes you have to sacrifice yourself for the team for that. Certainly he had a below par for his own ridiculous standards final, but for a semi-final first half performance in the biggest game of the year, in the biggest game Kerry have had in maybe 10 years, that he was immense. And then at the end to come up with that kick, okay, that was just a moment of genius, but let's not masquerade the fact that his first 15-20 minutes in that game were incredibly powerful.
And he's a Kerry captain.
He's in everyone's team. Yeah. Sorry, Dan.
Yeah.
He's in everyone's team. Yeah, he's in your team, Dan, is he?
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Dan.
I was going to say, I don't think there's anyone denying Sean O'Shea deserves one. Is there?
But after that kick against Dublin, Jesus Christ, he should be man of the year.
Well, I was going to say, there's a couple of other people that we haven't mentioned much.
Wait, who was your manager of the year? Sorry, Dan. Probably no brainer.
Jack. Yeah. I was only going to say Shane Ryan in goal had a great year. And see, the one goal kickouts were rock solid all year. So Rafferty actually had a couple of shaky games and he plays with a lot more risk because he's out the pitch. But Ryan was very consistent. Thought Brendan Rodgers had a great year. I know Comer caught him in the semi-final. It goes back to the same point about consistency versus, I suppose, getting done for one goal definitely in the second one. I'm not sure you could do much about it. It was on your own one-on-one with Comer with 50 yards of space and no goalie behind you. But yeah, I thought he had a very powerful Ulster Championship. After that, then suppose there's probably not too many other hard luck stories, is there?
Well, I like Finian's. I think it was Finian mentioned this. Conor Mccloskey was one that I liked all year.
No, sorry, yeah.
Yeah. Now you'll not get one, but in fairness, fair play to the young lad. He's really come through this year, and he's worth an honourable mention.
He was brilliant against Shane Walsh. Unbelievable. Sorry, John.
Excellent. Yeah, excellent. The pace. He has the pace, and geez, he's frightening. And do you know what? Actually, I agree with Daniel. Like I put Ethan Rafferty in because in an Armagh man on my heart, but I don't actually believe he's going to get an All-Star. I think Ryan's going to get it.
Yeah.
I don't know. He's probably only conceded a couple of goals all year.
One
goal all year. Yeah, penalty.
Yeah. No, it was
Darren McCarthy.
Costello's bullet.
Oh yeah, Costello's bullet to the bottom corner. Great goal. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I would say that.
I tell you, lads, so that tells its own story, and I think that's a brilliant shout by Daniel. And
I actually think Ryan will get it. To be honest, I'd agree with you. I think he will.
I think he will too. Yeah.
I just thought Rafferty, some of his performances were scoring 2 points from play, one game, winning multiple frees that were put over. Gives them a totally different dimension, I suppose, and will change the game, as you said, to a certain extent going forward too.
And I have to say, just a small thing on that, and this is where Kieran has sort of stuck to his guns. And Kevin would remember, Kieran tried this 6 or 7 years ago, and it went horribly wrong. Yeah. It was an absolute disaster, and he got unbelievable stick for it. But he was so far ahead by thinking ahead of the game, and that's also worth a mention to the man too. Like that.
Absolutely. What a point, John.
Yeah. Had the cojones to keep at it and to make it work. In
fact, that game was down in Cavan, and it was Paul Courtney, a former
Paul Courtney,
former college friend of mine. The problem with Kieran is he took a priest into the Playboy Mansion, if you know what I mean. The guy hadn't a clue what he was going to do. Courtney wasn't the right selection for that, if you know what I mean. Whereas Ethan Rafferty has certainly showed this year that, yes, Daniel's rightly pointed out he had a few bloopers, but he's going to learn from this year massively. And there's a lot of potential in him. His kick-out's good. His reading of the game is generally good. Now, he did concede a few scores inside Croke Park that hurt them. There was a point or two from bad kick-outs, and there was maybe a goal that they conceded that did hurt them in the end. But I have no doubts that Ethan Rafferty will come back stronger next year. And I think, this is an excellent experiment that there's a lot of potential in.
And not to mention, Kev, Courtney was a serious bit of crack. A serious bit of crack.
He's done the play by bench, right?
Yeah, he fit in rightly around it. He's a serious bit of crack.
Yeah, good lad.
Yeah, good lad.
But just talking about manager of the year, for the lads, and it's pretty obvious that if somebody wins the Premier League or wins the NFL, they're going to get coach of the year. But it's worth, and I understand, what people are saying about Jack. There was a lot of pressure on there bringing Tally in, but the boys buying into him, knew him from a couple of years back. We also have to acknowledge the role that Porrick Joyce did in terms of the development of that team.
Paddy done well with Kerry, Kev. What do you reckon her?
Yeah, there's no doubts he did, but I mean, it's not my type of football. But I mean, it is.
Rory Gallagher too, to be fair.
And that was my next one. From an Ulster perspective, what Rory Gallagher has done is immense, absolutely immense. When you consider there was 4 teams in Division 1 this year, they weren't one of them. When Tyrone had won the All Ireland last year and they had to go there in the first round, you can really count on the one hand. Tactically, his astuteness is brilliant. So, I mean, I think, yes, Jack will be the popular choice, but you have to give Porrick Joyce credit for
big time
what he's done in Galway, the people he's brought in. I mean, John Dively, Obviously, he was down in UCD for a while, and he was thought very highly of there. You know, he's had Cian O'Neill in with him as well. You know, he's starting to build something there, and he's brought Galway right back up to the top table. And he's looked at that defence that was so shaky and solided it up as a good deal. And also the job that Rory Gallagher's done. I think them are the three main contenders. But obviously Jack will be the most popular choice because at the end of the day, history always remembers the winner.
And just a small bit on that, Kev, from PJ. I would be right in saying, Finn, like, he was under the pump down there. There was a lot of pressure at the start of the year.
Big time.
And it's full credit to him because he stuck to his guns. You know, so it's a very special mention to him because he's having a phenomenal year. And for me, like, I love to see, like I said at the start of the year, the podcast, I thought Finian, you know, is a very Jekyll and Hyde. He's got a level of consistency going with that Galway team, and it's been phenomenal, you know, so full credit to him.
He does, yeah, and to be fair, you're right. Like, things weren't good here in December. Like, there was all sorts of rumours, there was all sorts of crack going on. Players had left, players had fallen out. It was public knowledge. Players were falling out left, right, and centre. Himself and Killian McDade. Killian McDade left the panel last year. Or he left the panel. There was a fallout. Whatever happened, I don't know. But Killian was fit to play, but he wasn't in the panel. Now we're talking about him for Footballer of the Year. So, you know, I think PJ probably had to swallow a bit of pride, which is not like him. You know, PJ's PJ. You know, he's God down here. So, you know, he's right most of the time. So, you know, when this was a challenging environment coming off the back of getting relegated and things like that or whatever, he had to change and he had to bring in Cian O'Neill and he had to, you know, maybe push off the pride a bit and say, look, I don't know everything. You know, I don't have a monopoly on knowledge. I need to bring in someone here that's going to change this up and the players are going to buy into. So I think there was some harsh conversations between some of the senior players and PJ with regards to shaking up the backroom team. And that happened, in fairness. And, you know, you're right. He did a phenomenal job this year. You know, there was a couple of games, like, for us to get to a final is monumental because we don't get to a lot of finals. And, like, consistently, you know, getting up to Division 1 again, like, next year is a huge year for us again to build on it. But I think he's done an unbelievable year to steady the ship down here, and he blooded a lot of players because they got to 10 players that left, which is a big exodus to a panel, you know. So, like, the likes of Jack Glynn has gone in, young guy, you know, Matty Tierney, these boys, they're all very early 20s. It's a very young team, so he's developed them, got them to the final. In patches, could have possibly nipped it. You know, it wouldn't have been deserved, but they could have nipped it. So they'll take a lot of belief in that. But you're right. I think he deserves a mention. He's done a smashing job. So hopefully he'll stay on now for a couple of years.
There we go. Kev, what was your team?
Okay, batten down the hatches.
Oh, here we go.
Ethan Rafferty, for the reasons I said.
It's not an Ulster All-Star team no before we start.
Yeah. He'll have that from Antrim in the probably. Mick McCann midfield.
Get your mask off, Kevin.
Ethan Rafferty. Silk was in my team.
Not the first time that was said.
Very good, very good. Aye, lads, he's all right there. Aye.
We're not after the watershed yet, lads.
Yeah.
Go on, Debbie.
So, Foley at full back. I think that's a no-brainer for everybody after the year he's had. And obviously, the other no-brainer in the team was Chrissy McCaig. Again, I went for, as I said, Daly, Murley. I know that's controversial. And Gavin White is again another no-brainer for me. At the same midfield as Johnny. And here's where mine begins to change, and the reason why I pointed out earlier. Shane McGuigan in. I have Kieran Kilkenny in because I think he'll get in, and I've Sean O'Shea in. I've Comer, Clifford.
No, Shane Walsh, the watch now.
Shane Walsh. I do.
You do have Shane Walsh. I thought you were.
Well, the full forward line picks itself.
I think the big one in my issue are I give Silk the nod and I give Shane McGuigan the nod. And yes, they're left field picks in a way, but in the round, Yeah, I've got John Daly in as well, maybe, which is a left field pick, but I just think there'll be one or two. I think I said this last year when I was on with you. I think we all probably agree on somewhere between 10 and 12 of these picks, or maybe 10 and 13, and it's the other 2 or 3 that will be the difference, and we'll all have our reasons why.
Have you Rian or Glass midfield?
Glass. Sorry,
Rian wasn't your team. Yeah.
Rian was not in my team, but I think I made that known in the WhatsApp group about 3 weeks ago, Johnny, if you remember.
Yeah.
So Glass was in my team. I think I made that known pretty much back then. And again, it comes back to the point that I think Finian made earlier on. Probably I'm wrong because Derry will not get 3 All-Stars. So one of them 3 is going to lose out. But I can't see that being Chrissy. I really can't. So, it's either Glass or McGuigan. And for me, I don't think McGuigan's being talked about enough.
Well, just a small one, Kev. Would you say that Armagh would definitely get 1?
I'm not sure. If I'm honest with you, I'm not sure. I think the reason why I picked Rafferty is he was just so unique this year. And when I look around at the other keepers, Daniel's made a good counter argument against me, which I can't really evidence anything different. But when we look at, Comerford, when we look at the Galway goalkeeper, when we look at the Derry goalkeeper, they weren't as consistent as either Rafferty or Ryan. So I just think they might go out on the left field with him. And that's why I think Armagh will get 1. The other big issue for me about Rian is Rian's so versatile, but then we're trying to fit him in around other people, aren't we?
I think he's definitely going to get 1.
I agree.
The type of player he is, that kick he had, the stock he comes from, I think he is nailed on somewhere on the pitch. I'd probably say they'll go midfield and Conor Glass won't get 1. No, I'm not saying that's right, but I think that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, I'd agree, and I don't think it's right either. And that's why I put Conor Glass in my team. But I do think if Armagh is definitely going to get 1, it ain't going to Ethan Rafferty, that's for sure. And it's
Shane Ryan will get it.
Yeah, I think Shane Ryan will get it, and I think they'll squeeze Ryan in somewhere. But who's going to lose out? And that's the debate,
Yeah.
Well, Kev is on the selection committee for the All-Stars. He just hasn't told us that yet.
Well, Daniel will know who they are. He's
Johnny, you'll have him. You'll have Ryan on the top 3 for Player of the Year. So you have.
I didn't want to say it, but no, I don't.
Jesus.
To be fair, we know, you know how these selections work. It's about trading, and everyone will get their couple, and the All-Ireland champions will get more. That's the way it works, and Dublin will get their 1. That's the nature of it. And you've probably 20 people in a room debating on picking 15 positions. So, in fairness, there's bound to be mayhem as well. And everyone will want their piece of the cake.
And another point that they never brought up either, Kevin, I'm surprised. You didn't have any teams from Ulster in an All-Ireland final. So don't be even thinking that there's 4 or 5 All-Stars going to cross the border, because it ain't happening. And you know that. That's a fact. So...
Yeah, but I suppose I'm just picking from what I see, Johnny. You understand what you're saying about the political dimension to it, or the so-called parochialism that people in Ulster feel. But when we look across the championship as a whole, Finian, he can certainly, I can say this with lots of justice to him with Galway this year, they played consistently good football against good teams. They had 5 cracking teams to play to get into that final. That's what makes them getting into that final so good this year. And for me, to have to take into that point that McGuigan was going to Oma, he was having Hampshire hanging out of him. Donegal, he was having players hanging out of him. Owen Ban hanging out of him. And he was consistently brilliant. But I understand the political dimension that you're saying. And the other point is,
I agree with you as well. I don't think in the media he's getting enough props for what he did this year in the weekend, especially. He's the one fella that I think will probably lose out, whereas I think he should be. He was definitely one of the most consistent performers. And I suppose the key thing went probably above and beyond a couple of times, like, you know, kind of stood out, like, as opposed to just being consistent.
And that's the difficulty. The difficulty of this whole thing is the system. I know we're not got into it yet, but like a lot of the chat tonight is about, you know, players hanging out of players would say the difficulty in Ulster and Christy McCaig, Mark and these guys and this guys. Like, we haven't mentioned Cork or Limerick, Mark and Clifford, because they were non-events really. You know what I mean? So just until the system is, it's very hard to pick all-stars based on the whole year, because until the system changes, it's a waste of time. Dublin and Kerry are treated differently, should be treated differently, because Derry are playing harder opposition, and Galway are even playing harder opposition.
And Joe what, Finian, I wouldn't be afraid to say either, Finian, and I'll be honest about it. And Ulster normally is a clinker, but Ulster this year was not. And I call a spade a spade. Yeah, and Tyrone, the wheels had come off. There was a load of in-house nonsense. There was players left the panel. There was all sorts. You know, Derry, you just seen McBonner gone. You know, there's a lot of stuff there too. Donegal, they weren't at the level that. And I think next year actually, Ulster's going to be a humdinger. You know, I think the teams are going to be back up. You know, Cavan's going to have a wee boost in their sales as well. Possibly somebody new in there too, a good championship team.
Mickey Graham staying put, I think, yeah.
Yeah, well, Mickey, and he's going to have somebody new in the back room by all accounts. You know, Tyrone's going to get their house in order. They've good young lad coming through. Derry's going to get a good shake up now. Donegal, keep mixing them up. And Derry's going to take a lot from where they came from. Armagh's still in Division 1, so it's going to be helter skelter. And
you'll have a new winner, Johnny, I'd say, will you? Next year.
Yeah, I'd imagine so, to be honest. I'd imagine so. I don't know. It'd be interesting to hear Kev's shout on that, but not be answering anyway.
There's more chance of a one-armed man lifting Pavarotti from the grave. To be quite honest with you, and sorry, just
new manager up there.
Andy McAtee's doing that job for the love of the game. I don't care what anyone says.
Kev, you're all
easy, boys, easy.
Say that, Darren.
Do you know from all these things they just roll off the tongue? Like, you must have them stored somewhere. There must be a little compartment in the mind or something.
I hear them now and again. Even like if you go through for a night out here in Glasgow, you get some of the one-liners that them boyos have, like, you know, things like, "Oh, sure, Hemi, it'd steal the eyeballs out of the back of the head and sell them back to you for a $5." You know, one of them ones.
Hey, Kev, more like some of the one-liners have.
But John, we'll have to call Daniel Goulding out here tonight, because we're talking about
time.
All-star selections and all this. If memory serves me right, because I don't forget a lot of things that are said, Daniel Goulding was once on the board, minor something, picking a minor team. Isn't that right?
I know where this is going.
2018, wasn't it?
You're incorrect already on what I was on. You're incorrect. But go on, yeah.
What was it? You didn't even know who you were picking.
The Mccarthy.
I can't divulge that information. There was a non-disclosure agreement.
Yeah.
Ultimate professional.
Again, we'll say I was badly advised. That's what we'll say.
Always take the checks down.
It happens.
No, I think, Johnny, back to your main point. I think one of the elephants in the room in the GAA next year is actually what we've just learned tonight, and this is major. Is Conor Lavery appointment in Down? I think it's a major appointment, not for what going to happen next year, but maybe the next 2, 3, 4 years down the line, because this guy's a serious operator.
Sorry, Kev, your manager of the year. Who was that?
I had to go for Jack O'Connor.
Yeah.
Had to. But You know, Lavery coming back into Down is going to be serious over the next couple of years for Ulster football too. You know, he's got a good under-20s there. I see staying over the under-20s. I would think that he'll start putting in place in Down serious structures. And he's more known as a coach than a manager. But this guy, you know, just keep him over your shoulder. I think Down can make an impact over the next 6-7 years with him floating about. You've got Armagh, you say, consistently going well. Gary back into the mix. I expect a vicious Tyrone next year, a real vicious Tyrone. Donegal, it's going to be really interesting to see who's appointed there.
Rory Cavan opinion.
So I believe that's the murmurs, but you just wouldn't know. There's a few. I hear Davy Fitz is getting the Waterford job tonight, but you just don't know what's.
Handley knows. He just has a head in him. He just knows this shit, doesn't he?
There's a lot of people in Galway this weather on holidays from different counties.
There's some great point up there in Salford or something. I don't know what it's like.
If you go to the pub and
there's some horse trading going on down in Galway at the races. That's it, I guess.
Horse trading, lads. We know we'll have all the in on every county manager for the next.
That's why Paddy Power don't have the book on who's the next manager anymore. Yeah. That's Finian.
Insider dealing. Watch the space, but yeah, I think Rory Cavan. There's talk of Rory Cavan, Eamon McGee. He's keeping his cards close to his chest, but I think that's what they're going to do. I think they're going to go low key Donegal. You know, they've had the fanfare, they've had, you know, these backroom teams and stuff like that. I think they're going to go local. And just try and take it back and get someone in there who can work with the players. Monaghan, there's talk of J.O. and Monaghan and stuff like that. So, and obviously Mayo, McStay will be an interesting one there if he goes in. Like, obviously he's got a serious backroom team, but a lot of egos in that backroom team, in fairness, and that's either unbelievable or it's a car crash. It's there's no in between there. So, yeah, you're right, Johnny. I think there's going to be some serious step up next year in some teams, and the competition will be absolutely right.
We're forgetting the big smoke too, like.
If that does transpire. Oh, Longford, Dan.
Capital.
Yeah.
Longford.
The Dubs as well. The Dubs will be they'll be looking for a new manager.
No, the real cap.
What are you hearing, Dad?
I'm not hearing anything, but there was rumblings all year that wasn't a happy camp, and if that gets back to being a happy camp with, I suppose, some of the players they already have, and also the general population they have, and the amount of good, solid players they have there in general, they'll come back and be a force to be reckoned to too.
They'll beat all the four. I agree. Yeah.
There's a shout for you, Daniel. Now, with Darcy Wade and Leinster Rugby, you know, is it possible that the Monaghan thing's been kept quiet? That maybe J.O. could be in the mix there too? You think?
He needs to be institutionalised if he goes near it. Monaghan, for me, are the one team right now that if you're offering 100 grand for them, just for me, it's a no-brainer. Don't go near it. Now, you're down there, Johnny, but I mean, so McManus is coming towards the end. What a footballer he's been. Over reliant, maybe last year on Jack McCarron an awful lot. Yeah, Conor McCarthy steps up now and again. But in terms of, Dan just said there about Dublin and why they will always be competitive because of such a big pick. Monaghan haven't got that. They always punch above their weight. But I think just now is the time that they will start to fade away. The other issue is as well, they haven't had a great run of it in minors and under 20s over the last couple of years in Ulster terms, if you know what I mean. So backing up the players they have now with 2 or 3, 4 lads coming in to be competitive, as Finian pointed out with Galway this year, where they were able to bring 10 guys in, you know, who made a big difference to that panel in terms of reinvigorating it. I just don't see Monaghan having that strength and depth anymore.
No, I think in Monaghan, I think they need to be a wee bit realistic. I think there's a semi-rebuild job that's probably needed there, and a freshening up. There is good players in the county, don't get me wrong. I agree with you to the extent that, like, I know McManus, listen lads, they don't come along too often, and I even went to see him playing yesterday. just for the enjoyment of it, I went to see him, and he's a phenomenal player. And Monaghan is going to miss a marquee forward like that for me. That's lads, they don't come along too often, and we talked about this before. Like the Kerry has a couple of them. Galway has shown up with a couple, and that's the difference. Monaghan badly need a marquee forward, a Shane McGuigan, even something like that. That's you're guaranteeing that he's going to kick 7, 8, 9 points a game. And they just don't have that, I don't think, at the moment.
Well, 100%. He was incredible. Like that score he got against Tyrone and Oma that they showed from the sideline.
Oh, Christ, save us!
That's as good as you get. That's as good as you get. And then on a slightly different line, look at Dublin this year against Kerry. Dublin had Con against Kerry with all their failings this year that have probably beaten them. And now we're talking about this Kerry team. I'm hearing 3-4 in a row of this, and I think I'm scratching my head. But if Dublin had Con, they'd have probably, as bad as they were for the first half and got their tactics wrong, they'd have probably beaten them. So I think if Dublin's setup is right, they're going to be a dangerous animal again. Even with a couple of the lads pushing on, like James Mccarthy, if he stays on, I presume he will. He's still a dog. Like Kilkenny will give you the exact same thing again. I think they're going to be, if they get their setup right, you can go back to the kind of the buy-in they had with Gavin. They're going to be. It's probably not be a show, but they're going to be extremely dangerous again.
Oh, I agree with you, Daniel. And where do you see, like, put Shane Walsh in our forward lines? It's going to be unbelievable.
Oh, here we go.
That's
Here we
off.
go.
I know that. That's called off.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's on.
It's on like Donkey Kong.
Didn't pass the test. You have to be. You can't be third level education. So the deal is off. Yeah.
Hanley, as long as he plays for Galway, you'll be happy. Kevin McCarthy,
he's not playing for Kilmacud. You know that.
Definitely off. Definitely not going.
Yeah. You can't be third level education. You have to be working in the county.
Or he can move. His permanent residence.
Yeah, no, they'll find ways of me. I mean, you get a job as a full-time barman in Kilmacud Club, or a tennis ball boy in Kilmacud Club, as they have, or
that's the worst area.
He's paying a stamp fee, and he has a full residence in Dublin. He's good as gold.
What an addition!
But then again, he could go and play with Bernard, So.
Arnold's coming back, I think, isn't he?
Yeah.
Oh, Lord above, lads. Lord above. Mr. Brogan wants him to get everyone else. Kevin McCarthy, your thoughts on Mr. Shane Walsh's transfer to Kilmacud Crokes?
It's one of these things. I mean, people have. There was a journalist up here in the Irish News called Cahar O'Kane. He's a pretty good journalist, a Derry fella, and he writes an article every Tuesday, and it's pretty decent reading. But I mean, he was so far left field in this. He was in Hawaii. It was that bad, I mean, it was so far left field. We have to understand that GAA is an amateur sport. People travel all over the world for jobs and travel all over the world for professions and move places because of marriage and whatever else has it, And yes, the club is the hub of the GAA, but, Johnny's club have benefited from transfers. I'm sure Daniels has, and no Finian has, because he got one or two in when the Duff Disney All-Ireland Club final, and we've certainly had a lot of them. We've certainly had a lot of them come to Belfast. So I can't complain about players coming in, but I think the greater scheme of things is we have to understand that this is an amateur organisation. People will move to study. People will move to for family life. I mean, one perfect example: James Lockery from Antrim married a girl from Cork. Was anybody expecting him to come back up and down the country 3-4 hours to play for that? He found a club in Cork. He found a county team. He very much enjoyed his time down there. There's no doubts about that. So I mean, we'll have to get real. And there's been a lot of many transfers as there every year in the GAA. Yes, this is Shane Walsh, one of our marquee players. Yes, he's coming from a small enough rural area. I don't know it overly too well, but he's going into a big urban hub.
Mm-hmm.
Now, at the end of the day, Shane Walsh has to be selfish about Shane Walsh. You know, the GAA is not going to hand him a job. He's got to get his qualifications. He's got to do his stuff. He's got to do whatever else he needs. And if it's not practical for him to go back home, then that's the way it is. The last point I'll make to you about this is, any year in the Dublin Senior Football Championship, how many players who are inter-county players from Longford, from my own county, Antrim, from Down, I've seen, from Mayo, are playing for Dublin clubs, who were or are top inter-county footballers. Conor Mortimer springs to mind. You know, Paul Galvin springs to mind. So Brian Kavanagh for Longford, who was a cracking player for years, played for Kilmacud. So why all of a sudden we're making an example out of Shane Walsh? I think it's a lot of media-driven bullshit, and I think the fella's been singled out, and we need to respect that he's an amateur athlete and he's entitlement to decide and make his own decisions about what he does in terms of his own enjoyment for playing Gaelic football.
And not even that, Kev. See the games you play in like I played up there in it. It is unbelievable.
Yeah.
The games that you play in the Dublin Championship, the level, the buzz, the atmosphere, it is serious football, and it's a hard championship to win. You know, it's the toughest one I ever played in, that's for sure.
Mr. Goulding, your thoughts on Shane Walsh transfer deadline day heading to Kilmacud Crokes?
A bit torn on it, being honest. Granted, what Kevin said, I understand, but he's still travelling back to Galway for 10 months of the year. He's still playing inter-county football with Galway. The club championship is going to last, 6, 7, 8 weeks max. There is an element, because of the club he's going to as well. It is attractive, like, and it is a chance to leave your home club to go winning something. That's if he was finished with Galway and retired and he was moving there, I'd have no issue. We have a couple of lads from Kerry that would have had to travel up and down the road 2 hours playing with us, but they're not going down there anyway to play with Kerry or anything. But that's the only difference I see in this, is that, and this will go for any inter-county player that's still playing with their county and travelling and playing with a Dublin club. Just a bit of it's not what the GAA is about in terms of its ethos. Generally, your parish is your parish, unless, like Loughry had, like a totally different situation where you're actually living in the other side of the country and you're not playing with your county anymore. That's the only difference I'd see in it. Again, agreed, the media attention on it is totally blown out of proportion. But that's the only bit where my heart is kind of torn on it. Understand Kevin's point as well, but he's still going to be making the travel up and down for Galway. That's the only difference.
Big stakeholder in this, Finian Hanley.
Yeah, no, I look, as Kevin rightly said, we benefited from flow-ins from all over the country, you know, boys with big names and this, that, and the other, you know. Granted, they were living and working in the area for a long time before they played for us. Gary Cox, name one, Michael Donlan, was living here for 8 years before he joined us. He was living here when he won both All-Irelands, actually. He was living in Salt Hill, so his grandmother was living here, so he moved in with her. So, look, I take Dan's point as well, that this is a small bit different, because Shane will spend a lot of time in Galway. Shane's doing an online course. It's, you know, it's an online course. It's not a into college everyday kind of job or whatever. I think that's where it falls down a bit on people. It's not a living in Dublin because I have to get up and do the slog and get on the loose every morning around 9 to 5. It's not that at all. You know what I mean? So I take Dan's point as well. I agree. You should be able to do what you want within reasons, but I think they do have to look at the parameters a little bit on it, where you can just rock in, and because it could become a free for all. It could become a, you know, I'm heading up and I'm joining Cross McGlenn because I'm I'm friends with Johnny or whatever it is. He comes out and they start making, my address is Johnny Murtagh's address or whatever. Just stuff like that.
We'll take it.
Would you take my
Over
wheelchair
40s.
as well?
Over
Take
40s.
We would. You get a game at the minute, yeah. We take it.
But you know what I mean? Like you do fear that kind of free for all could start happening. I take Dan's point, but I do look. I agree. If lads want to go someplace and they fall within the criteria, there should be no furore about it. It happens. People move to Dublin. Kev made a few really, really good points there with regards to Brian Kavanagh. These guys, loads of guys moved up and down the country. Gary Cox moved to Salthill. He joined us. He was living here for about 4 years. He's married here, but it took him 4 years to kind of say, look, I'm finished joining up and down to Fallux and Roscommon. I'm actually going to join Salthill now because the travel. And he's still a huge club man on his own, but he just couldn't travel up and down. He couldn't. And he was living in Knocknacarra. Simple as that. So I agree with that, but there's got to be some sort of parameters to it. It can't just be, look, I'm in Dublin, I'm out every night of the week, I'm having the crack, but I'm spending a lot of time in Galway, but I'm playing for Kilmacud because they've given me this, that, and the other, and it's a better championship. That's my own take on it.
Johnny?
Can't argue with that. Can't argue with Mr. Hanley, big Galway man, and it's his own people, so it's probably one that springs to mind for me. Probably, a Galway midfielder years ago, Brian Talty, played in Dublin as well. I don't know if he's making the trip up and down or not, but that'll be the one that springs to mind from Galway for me.
His home was up there, Johnny. Like he's been there. He's been there since Touts' Dublin to the core.
Raheny married in Raheny, wasn't he? Yeah. So look at. I can't argue with Finian on his own county, man. So
I think Shane's missus is from Cork, there. So what's this?
Didn't know that.
What's the space?
We take him gladly.
Jesus, you change your tune there. You must be a man.
I'll drive him up to Galway for Galway training. There'll be no panic. No bother. That's sorted. Does he play hurling as well? Does he?
He tried.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose, and Johnny, you've skin in the game in terms of like when you did move up to Parnells, was there any bad blood or were you just wasn't happy enough?
Oh, look, it crosses open door policy. There's no problem, as we were still stuck in the middle of a recession. And there was nothing happening. I mean, it was dead. I come back from New York. It's the reason personal reasons I had to go away in the first place, and look, it was bad, and I was working in Dublin, a full-time job. I was started off coaching up there, full-time coaching, and I loved it. And I actually think that it was the best. Like I said, it was the best football arena that I ever played in. I think at the time, the strength and conditioning and everything else were way ahead. They were just. I know all the lads is at it now, but I'm talking 11 or 12, or maybe 13, whatever it was. Like it was like there was, club teams with full gyms, and like it was just unreal. It was just different gravy, and I absolutely loved the environment. The football in it was top class. It was so
good to get exposed to all that. It's brilliant.
Yeah, and it brings out the best in you at an age when I was probably in my prime. The only difference was that I felt that I didn't give my own club the years in my prime, and that's what hurts the most. Now, at the moment, that's what hurts the most when you sit back and look at it. And of course, you have regrets, and in one way, you learn an awful lot from it. Like what age is Shane at the minute, Finian?
29.
He's 28, coming 29, yeah.
So he's around the same age as myself when I went, and he's going to be in his prime. And I tell you, I'll be straight with you, Finian. If he's playing in Dublin Championship, I'll be in my car and I'll be in Dublin watching it. That's just a fact.
Is your prime 29? No, I was washed up when I was, I'd say, 28.
The amount of alcohol I took, I was out when I was 23. No, but John, not to prolong it, but I'll give you an excellent example of this. I lived for a year with Billy Joe Padden, and he was playing for Mayo at that time. And Jesus, what that man was doing was beyond exhaustion. You know, he was living in a house in Belfast. He was studying there. It was quite an intense course. He was doing a master's, I think, in environmental planning, or to be a planner anyway. And it was long, long hours. And, you know, he was going back home on a Thursday night, 4.5 hours, you know, Thursday afternoon, leaving Belfast to get into training for Mayo.
Your antics.
Yeah. And, you know, when you think about that, you know, the commitment he was given was unbelievable, absolutely unbelievable. You know, and eventually it was only a matter of time before burnout. And I suppose then he met a girl from Newry, as Johnny knows, and he moved in there to Kerrycrubban, and then he transfers over to Armagh because it was just impossible what he was doing. Impossible. And I know that Kerry have for years trained in UCD for the players that are based up there, and maybe other county teams train up there as well and do stuff like that. So, I mean, it's not as if Shane Walsh is going to be going back home, say, 2 nights a week to Galway and then coming back up. I think maybe there might be a facility there for him to train in Dublin. He doesn't have to make that commitment, certainly during the league times anyway. That was the same with Kerry. So, you know, for me, I've seen somebody do that. The burnout is impossible, incredible, and the commitment in it's incredible. So I think we'll have to look at the guy as a human being, and you know, he's the right to make his own decisions, but also we also have to look behind. If he is living in Dublin, it's a huge commitment.
And when you moved from St. Galls to Chicago that year, Kev, was there much uproar?
No. They were glad to see me go. And they were sad to see me home.
Oh, that is class. Yeah, transfers in the GAA, lads. It's touchy up in Cavan, so we will not get into it up here. Johnny Murtagh, your moment of the year.
Moment of the year for me has to be Sean O'Shea into the hill in the semi-final against Dublin. We had this debate with Rains, but I'm my own club man, but I still have to go with that. There was just, look at lads, you go a lot of years, you're down to Mars Fitzgerald outside the boot, you're down to different, you'll talk about it from years to come to one of the best teams of all time, and to do that into the hill is just phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal.
Class.
Daniel doesn't like it, but it's still phenomenal.
No, I'm torn on it. No, just listen to me. Just listen.
Just have it. I hate Cork or Kerry.
No, it's not
here.
Not at all. No, I would just argue just two things. It's an unbelievable moment, no, because they won it out. It was to win it. So it was a kick to nothing. Rian's one was as difficult, if not a more difficult kick, at a way bigger angle. Probably the same distance. You'd forget that because it was on the 45. It's probably the same distance because of the angle it was at, and that was to level it. So all I'm saying is, it's a toss-up. Like, it's more iconic moments, but what Rian did was off the wall as well. Like,
Absolutely.
That's all I was going to say. They're neck and neck for me.
Yeah, and Rain will get his all-star out of it, and that's good.
You don't know your angles, your trigonometry either, lads, I'd say, by the look of it. You're all laughing at me when I said the length of the kick was nearly the same. I bet you it wasn't far off it.
Yeah. Sean O'Shea is well behind the line now.
Oh, 2 unbelievable kicks, though, lads. Mr. Hadley, yourself.
John, that's the job for you now. Get the old measuring stick out.
Yeah.
The old measuring stick out.
We want to know by
He couldn't find his way to Crow Park, for fuck's sake. You want directions?
Oh, the umpire will have a measuring stick, all right. He'll be wanting to know how many mile it is for the diesel in the fucking car, so he will. He'll measure it bit by bit.
Oh God, can't go. Yeah.
Sorry, go on, John. I went for Sean O'Shea as well. I suppose I was gripped by the whole thing. I was more emotionally. I was fucking the head off Rian O'Neill when he was taking the shot, so I was more emotionally attached to that. So I had a freer, more relaxed environment watching Sean O'Shea. I just think it was top class. It was a brilliant finish, and the Dubs came back, and the way it all happened. I just think, the drama of it all. I think it'll be on advertisements for years to come. I just think it was, and the way Dan, you know more than anyone, but the way he brought it so far right, and it came back in, and is it over? And you're kind of looking at the crowd to see where look at the hill to see are they getting up or whatever. So, given the scale of it, and for Kerry to get over Dublin, because we have to remember Kerry haven't beaten Dublin in so long. I think just the magnitude and possibly what it means for them going forward with regards to where they go from here. It could be the start of something huge for them. So I think, that was my moment of the year.
Mr. Goulding, your moment of the year, my man.
Saying that, I'd still go with Sean O'Shea was the moment of the year. I just think that all I'm saying is Rian's kick was off the wall too. Like, I suppose the thing with both of them is because you're so far out, you're absolutely thumping them. So if you don't get it full on, like Sean O'Shea, you can see Sean O'Shea's kick. That's not like technique was out the window there. He walloped that and to get it so on the money, like, is just incredible under that pressure. Only other things I would say is just watching the shootout between Clifford and Walsh in the final. Was crazy good. And the other one then was Kieran Martin's goal to win the Charlton Cup. In fairness, if it was the All-Ireland final, you'd have said it was one of the best goals you'd ever see. Collected it up by the 45 and passed about 3 or 4 fellas and buried it.
And mute.
Great
Sorry,
moment.
just mute
Great
that.
moment.
Sorry, yeah, mute that. Okay, yep.
Oh yeah. Great moment. I actually forgot it was Kevin. Sorry about that.
You did, yeah.
To be fair, he's been a war horse for them, and he's slogged a lot of years, and I suppose that was a just reward for him as well.
Breaking news: Mickey Graham, 2 more years, lads. 2 more years. So there we go. 2 more years of success. Yeah. Just broke there. So Twitter, Mickey Graham is at the helm for another 2 years. Kevin Mccarthy, moment of the year, my man.
I'm going to be greedy and steal 2, and they're not the lads' ones, and there's a reason why I'm stealing 2, because the lads have rightly pointed out our performance element in our game. The great Rian and the great Sean in terms of what they did, giving us them moments, and Shane Walsh and whatever else. But for me, one of the most heart-stopping moments was watching Derry people jump over the wire at Clonus. Something that we're not used to in the GAA anymore, but that outburst of what the GAA means to us was just brilliant. We hadn't seen that in 25 years. And the joy that brought to people in their ordinary lives. And I suppose the second moment is, regardless of how much we have this issue of performance and winning our association, the moment that Jack O'Connor shows that respect to Kieran Kilkenny after the Dublin Galway game, or Dublin Kerry game, typifies everything that our game should be about. So them 2 moments sort of for me were a microcosm of 2 sort of things that our association is so much about: our community and our respect for our opponent.
Pat Spillan's moment as well after the game was fairly up there too, I have to say.
Actually, there's one more. Actually, I forgot to mention Cork Loud qualifier. Sam Mulroy kicking points, and the whole rest of the team behind the 45, and then he just shot back to the 45 as well.
Live long in the memory, Dan. Live long in the memory.
Cork taking a short kick out to the middle of the field. It's one of the
it's mental.
One of the more iconic moments is the J.
Yeah, Fireman Sam. Player of the year, Johnny.
I think after the All-Ireland final, and I know we alluded to that, didn't play the Munster final, but the chickens definitely come home to roost with the semi-final and final. So I think David Clifford has to be the man of the moment, and he has to be the player of the year.
Mr. Hadley.
Clifford by a mile.
Gouldy Wooldy.
By a country mile, I suppose. All you were waiting for was the inevitability of it, and he delivered in spades. Also, pretty much beat Mayo on his own in the league final. Doesn't even have to play in Munster the way things are going at the moment. So it's up in the big stage in Croker where he does his damage.
Did it upset you seeing a left footer in an All-Ireland final perform like that?
Geez, not at all. No. And I mean this wholeheartedly what Walsh and himself did.
Oh, stop.
It's good for the
football
game.
porn.
It's good for the game of football as what you'll see.
Yeah, 100%. Great call. Yeah.
We're going to have, like, just on the two boys, I think next year, forwards-wise, and we mentioned it in a podcast earlier in the year because we had Sam Roy with McGuigan. Like, next year, you're going to have Tommy Conroy, Ryan O'Donoghue back. You know, you're going to have a lot of good forwards around the country next year. Like, it'd be actually enjoyable going to games to watch these players, you know, really, really open up. There's going to be, like, there's Shane, obviously, and Clifford and this, that, and the other, but, like, you're going to have Con back. You're going to have young Canavan from, like, what's he going to do next year? He could be an absolute superstar.
Yeah, the younger boy, yeah.
The younger buck, yeah. So, like, you know, you could have a lot of good forwards. If the game, you know, doesn't go into full blanket mode and it stays, you know, 3 up, 4 up, we could be in for a treat next year again with the caliber of forwards that's on display at the minute. Like, you know, you mentioned Samuel Roy. Like, he's a classy player. McGuigan, like, these guys are all, like, there's good forwards in most teams now. Classy forwards that can score from everywhere. So, I want to make the point.
Paul Malyon, Shane Walsh will definitely be interesting. Kevin McCarthy?
Suppose to do the Romans justice, the Emperor was crowned in the Colosseum.
Notebook is out again.
Yeah, he has all this written in front of him, Dan, 100%.
It was a beautiful coming of age. It was just sensational. And the one thing that got me, lads, was Clifford's a big lad. Yes, we've seen him catch high ball. We've seen him score ridiculous points off left foot, right foot. The one thing this year that really stood out for me was when you got them close-ups up of him and his first 3 yards, how fast he is for such a big man is frightening. You know, he asked the defender every question that there is, and then 10 questions more. You know, and it was his leadership as well this year was really important, you know, coming up, and it was just the crowning of the Emperor. It really was, and by Jesus, to watch him it was a delight for us all, and more for it. You know, hopefully next year comes again, and as Finian's rightly articulated, all these other lads, all these great champion footballers up front, let's see more of it.
And you know what, Kev? For one reason, there's probably one reason he probably deserves not to get it, and you know, I seen him in a picture with a pair of white shorts and a Honolulu shirt. So, you know, if that's about the only reason maybe you wouldn't give it to him, you know. But
Paul Galvin's the style advisor.
Oh, that says it all. Says it all.
Yeah. Any more thoughts on the year, lads? Are we happy enough? No. Taunton Cup is success. Happy enough in Taunton Cup. All good.
Yeah. More of it next year. Group stages, the whole lot. Shake it up, and eventually the provincials will dwindle because the outcry will come again next year, and we'll be into. We could have, in 2 or 3 years' time, we could have brilliant championships.
Great to see Westmeath win. They spent the money in their backroom team. If you spend the money, you will do well. Unfortunately, Calvin never spent the money.
Well, we 27 lads or something, Kev, so you slagged me about that, so need to get it sorted. But happy enough, lads. Any more points or thoughts?
No, Danny, well done yourself. Great year.
Well done, yeah.
Cheers, lads.
Cheers, Danny.
My ears have been sore all year. I need therapy after all this. I know, lads, unbelievable. Top class.
We look forward to Glasgow to the reunion with
Kevin.
Yeah. Can't wait, Kev. I have the passport. 100%.
Listen, anytime you want to land over, anytime whatsoever, not a bother. Nights out, pole dancing, You know yourself. And that's just in my bed. That's just in my bed, by the way.
Will you be pole dancing, Kev?
I'd be happy pole dancing. No, fuck that.
Your hips. Big hips in you.
McMahon will be landing with no cards and no sterling.
And a forged passport for €35 off some fella down Cavan.
Super value shopping bag then for luggage.
Yeah. after getting a lift over.
And tell him we're going swimming. He'll come in a pair of Speedos with a load of kids about.
Johnny, great chair in fairness, Shabbat.
Yeah, no, really enjoyed it, lads. Hopefully we can all stick about for next year. It'll be absolutely brilliant. Great year, lads. I've nearly even tear in my eye, but Johnny Murders keep me sane. Before we go, lads, just a quick bit of news on Friday. Tipperary hurler Dylan Quirk sadly passed away playing for his club. He was 24 years of age, and just more shocking news. So, Finn, what was the thoughts on that just when it happened?
Yeah, look, it's absolutely brutal for his family. It's not right. It's happening a lot more, but it's an individual case for them, and you can't imagine it happening to your own family. It's shocking. Guy in the prime of his life, GAA man, and look, in any walk of life, it's shocking, but absolute extreme condolences to them. I can't imagine the shock. And I suppose this is the time when the GAA family really have to rally around. No doubt they will in his club and everything, but it's very, very tough time for them. So, big, massive condolences to them all.
Kevy?
Yeah, desperate. I think we'll also remember this week a man, obviously, young man died of a heart issue, and we also seen the passing of Brendan McAnally, Cormac's father, who obviously died. Cormac had died through that as well, which was a huge shock to us many years back. So, I mean, been a desperate week for it. And we just treasure what we have and treasure life. And as I said, back when you're talking about the moments of the year, that's what the GAA gives us. It gives us great moments that we remember our lives by. And I suppose the other thing about the GAA is that great sense of community. And hopefully down in Tipperary, his family will get some small and minor bit of comfort from the community and the club, gathering around him. So heartfelt condolences to everybody down there.
Johnny?
Yeah, just to reiterate what the lad said, it's detrimental down there to a young man, and my heart goes out to him. We spoke about it, on the group, and it's extremely sad. Just what the lad said, I think the GAA community, when things like this happen, is just phenomenal. Whether it be a wee junior club, or whatever, everybody rallies round and all over the country. And our thoughts and prayers are with the family and the friends. It's absolutely devastating news, and as Finian rightly said, it's happening a wee bit more often now. I think we just didn't see the end of it yet either, lads, and for not just that sort of issue, but there's the health, the mindfulness and well-being issues as well that we've had in the GAA, and there's been different instances of them throughout the year. It's been very tough. And more help for our young people is needed. That's for sure. So my heart definitely goes out to them for this incident, and all the other poor families, all the other incidents as well. So.
Dan?
Yeah, look, the lads have rightly said it's absolutely shocking. It's unthinkable, really, and it's probably one of the last things you'll ever expect going to a match. That poor family probably at the game are getting the call, friends, teammates. Look, it's just really, really sad and unexplainable. And my heart goes out to the family and sincerest condolences to them. It's the last thing you'd expect going to a pitch to play a game if you won't be going home from it. And look, extremely, extremely sad. And unfortunately, there's no explaining a lot of things that happen in life. And I suppose that's what Kevin said about the GAA, and that's what's special about when you are playing it. And just to look, regardless if you win or lose, just being able to enjoy it and play it, I suppose, means the world to the majority of the country, and hopefully the GAA community will rally around that family. No doubt they will. Look, something probably needs to be done in the future again, but like, again, there's so many things going on in the world at the moment. It's a busy, busy place, and it's nearly small bites of the pie. The mental health piece is obviously huge, and I think it's just the fast pace of life, social media, everything, and then I suppose something unexplainable like this on top of it. Then it just makes you appreciate everything that you do have, and may the poor man rest in peace.
And just on that, do you feel like the rat race is back now? Like things for young people, young lads, probably lads my age, like that's why things are that bit tougher again? Dan, Finn, Johnny, Kev?
I think we need to be mindful of, you talked to me for the first time when we talked, was during lockdown with my younger brother Connor, and Connor was saying at the time that a lot of lads at the time, maybe it'd give them a better perspective on all the commitment that they were putting into the GAA. And that a lot of lads were thinking, is it worth it or what it is? But realistically, that mindfulness, getting out of the house, the change in routine, it's really, really important. And, this shouldn't only be to young people. It should be to people, who are in their 30s and coming into their 40s as well. The GAA has an obligation for things like the Masters as well, for letting people, have that camaraderie in a team environment. And, we need to ensure that, I suppose, there is a rat race. And, that's what, right across the UK, we're seeing a rat race. But we always need to be mindful of what we're thinking and what people in our community are doing. And I think the GAA does play a massive role in it. I think the GPA has been excellent in trying to promote its services more and more. But unfortunately, as the lads have rightly articulated, we always get people that fall through the net. And that brings us back to where we are now in terms of, we need to get this right. We need to ensure that we can do the maximum that we can to help anybody in the GAA, not just our elite players, anybody.
Bang on. Bang on. Yeah, there we go, lads. 100% well said, lads. Well said. Lads, thanks a million for joining me this week. And of course, this podcast is brought to you by orgarich.com and Atak.ie. Use the code JMAC podcast to get 15% off on orgarich.com and get the best skins, clothes, equipment on Atak.ie. Be attack minded. Johnny, Finian, Daniel, Kev, thanks a million.
Cheers, guys.
Lads.
Cheers up soon.
Cheers.